Larry Kudlow. Now, back to the Larry Kudlow Show.
The singling out of the one and only Jewish state continues to be a moral stain on the United Nations. It has made this once respected institution contemptible in the eyes of decent people everywhere. But for the Palestinians, this UN House of Darkness is home court. They know that in this swamp of anti-Semitic bile, there's an automatic majority willing to demonize the Jewish state on anything.
That, of course, was Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu really putting the wood to the UN, moral stain, anti-Semitic bile. Couldn't have said it better myself. And he was a great statesman for saying it. We're going to bring in Ambassador Robert O'Brien, my dear friend, former National Security Advisor during the Trump administration, presently chairman of American Global Strategies. Robert O'Brien, what you think about that speech? And then, I guess within minutes after that speech, Israel bombed the Hezbollah headquarters. They gave residents of the apartment buildings notice, get out, but they used bunker busters to get the Hezbollah tunnels underneath. And the evil Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of the Hezbollah, was killed, along with so many other of their commandos. So what do you make of this, Robert O'Brien?
Well, thank you, Larry, and thank you for having me on the show again. And you and I have both known Bibi Netanyahu for many years, long before we were in the Trump administration. And the one thing that Bibi cares about is the Israeli people and keeping Israel safe in a very dangerous neighborhood. As you know, as a young man, he lost his brother in the raid on Entebbe as they went to rescue those Israeli hostages on the plane in Uganda, taken by Palestinian terrorists. And here we are, all these years later, 40 years after Entebbe, with the Israelis hostage in Gaza. And I think what he said at the UN was absolutely true. I spent a lot of time at the UNGA. I was at the UNGA in the Bush administration. It's an anti-Semitic pit, but it's that virus has spread beyond the UN, Larry. As you know, I was up at Columbia University earlier last year talking to Jewish students that had been denied the ability to go to class or walk on the university campus wearing a yarmulke because they were Jews. And that's happening in America. So I'm glad Bibi called it out at the UN, but there's a lot of work to do on anti-Semitism here. As far as the Nasrallah operation, I mean, he's channeling Ronald Reagan. You can run, but you can't hide if you're a terrorist. It's going to target our people. And Larry, this is a long time coming. I'm reading a book now that's a terrific book I recommend to your listeners called Targeted at Beirut. It's by Jack Carr, the thriller writer and a historian named James Scott. And it talks about the bombing of the U.S. Embassy in Beirut and the Marine barracks in Beirut that killed so many American diplomats and Marines, those two bombings in the early 1980s, the 1983 bombings. And I'm thinking of Bob Ames, who was our lead CIA analyst on the Middle East, who Ronald Reagan sent to Beirut to try and sort things out, killed, never came home to his family. And there's finally these Hezbollah terrorists, many of whom were killed. Most of them got their start in those early 1980 Beirut bombings against Americans and French and Italians, and killed many, many hundreds of American Marines and diplomats. Justice has finally come to them. It shouldn't have taken so long, but justice has finally been served.
Oh, I love that. Justice has finally come. That's a great argument. It's a great line. It's a great line. Robert, I was going to speculate, because of what they did, successfully killing Nasrallah, and they've killed a lot of his deputies and other terrorist commandos, everyone's talking about escalating war. What do you think? I mean, sometimes, this is peace through strength. Sometimes these kinds of actions result in less war, fewer hostilities. Doesn't mean, I don't know, their resources and their leadership is gone. This may be a straw that breaks the camel's back. I mean, there may be skirmishes, but I think this action will do more for peace ultimately than just sitting by and whining about ceasefires, which is what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris do. They whine about ceasefires. Israel has taken action.
Larry, you're 100% right. It's peace with strength, and Bibi Netanyahu, got started in politics during the Reagan era like us, and he watched Ronald Reagan, and that's what informed him. And we've been so feckless since this war started. On October 7th. October 7th was a slaughter of over 1,000 Israeli civilians. Women raped horribly, sexual violence, just for the purpose of spreading terror. Toddlers killed in front of their parents. Parents killed in front of their children. The deaths on October 7th were, and keep in mind, many of them were Americans. 30 Americans were killed on October 7th. And what did we get from this administration? Sadly, there was no "you can run but you can't hide." We didn't kill or capture Hamas leaders. We didn't try and rescue our hostages. On your show, Larry, on your TV show, I came on very early in the crisis. I think it was a day or two after, and said we've got to send our Delta Force operators, the guys who caught Baghdadi, the guys who rescued, and the SEALs, the guys who rescued Walden in Niger. We've got to send them forward to Israel and help the Israelis rescue these American hostages who've now sat for over a year or almost a year in tunnels, and some have been killed, like poor Hirsch Goldberg Polland, who was American, who was brutally murdered, shot in the head, executed in mob style by these Hamas guys. And what have we done? The administration officials have wrung their hands and talked about not escalating, not provoking. Israel, to their credit, have rescued hostages. They've taken and fight the terrorist leaders. And you're right about the game changer. They wiped out this bunker that they took out. It was like getting Hitler's bunker at the end of the war.
Oh, yeah, yes.
No one said don't go after Hitler's bunker under the Reichstag.
Yes.
Because it would escalate things.
Wow.
You want to go after Hitler's bunker because that's where the Nazi leadership was, and you want to take them out and end the war. And that's what these guys are doing here, and God bless them.
Oh, my gosh. What a great metaphor. That is just terrific. Robert O'Brien, you are terrific. Best of the best. We really appreciate it. Sorry, we're always running out of time. Robert O'Brien, former national security advisor under Trump. He's now chairman of American Global Strategies. We'll talk about the Europe attack on American tech companies. We'll talk about it another time. Anyway, I'm Kudlow.